Hey guys, I just wanted to reach out to you and let you know that Surewinder is still selling amazing products. Some of you guys have been dragging your feet for whatever reason. If your shoulder hurts, do not waste time. Pull the trigger. I just bought 4 or 5 of them, and we had 2 guys out. You know how much it cost me to pay for 2 guys being out with bad shoulders? We just pulled the trigger and we said, listen, everybody's going to have one on a truck. It's mandatory. You got to use it. Don't hesitate. Don't wait till your guys go down. It's going to cost you more. Buy a Surewinder. What's up, guys? Ryan with Torsion Talk podcast. And, you know, I've been thinking about doing something for a very long time, and I'm not really sure this is the platform straight up, but I want to share my story. And this isn't going to be garage door related. However, I will get into some of that. It will be about life challenges. If you're a parent, this might be something you get something out of. You deal with addiction, insecurities, doubt. I mean, we're going to be dealing with a lot. I'm going to share with you my story. So I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable on you, a little, if that's okay with you guys. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to do a series. So there's going to be like, I estimate probably between 3 and 4, and they may not all be in a row because we're interviewing some people over the next couple weeks. So I want to set the stage and say that you might have one, and then 2 weeks later have another one, and then a couple weeks later have another one, just depending on how we roll these out. So bear with me. If you do not like this or you do like it, I mean, hit me up and let me know, because I don't want to do this if it's not of value. I think it's going to accomplish a couple things. Number one, I think you're going to get to know me a little better. I think you're going to understand why I am the way I am. I think you're going to understand who I am better, and maybe relate to me a little more. I also think that there's going to be some lessons in this that might help you along the way. So buckle up. Let's rock and roll. Time to get serious. All right. So I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'm not going to go into like too many like super details. I might dive deep into certain things just to give context, but I just want to get this story off the ground. So I know I'm going from the very beginning, so bear with me. I'll move fast the first couple parts, but I was born in a little town called Macon, Georgia. It's in central Georgia, to a 19-year-old. And who quickly became single. My dad had joined the military and traveled a lot. He wasn't a bad guy. Actually, he was a pretty good dad. I never really fully asked him the reasoning on leaving and going to the military, like when I was 1 year old. So we technically haven't had that conversation, I don't think. But he has been on the podcast before. My mom and dad have it's kind of spoiling a little bit of the party here, but they divorced when I was 1 and they remarried when I was 10. So that's kind of unique. You don't see that very often. But when we were young, my mother and I, we were very poor, and we lived on a little street called Mary Street or Mary Drive. Can't remember, in Macon, Georgia. These houses are like 600-700 square feet. And I don't know how or why I remember this, but I just remember like any toys that we left out, they'd just be gone. Um, and then we had a fence in the backyard, and people were stealing out of the backyard. So my mom bought like a lock, but it still didn't help. So I don't know why I remember that. And I hope all those details are right, but those are just memories I had from like very young childhood. I'm sure my mom will probably listen to this and tell me for sure, but she worked at Piggly Wiggly. And when I have these conversations with her, she always talks about the guy, the butcher, and how the butcher would always give her meat before throwing it out. And she literally had told me once that this butcher was probably one of the only reasons why we were able to make it, because she couldn't afford the bills for everything and to eat. And so the meat was super helpful. So I just look at that and I'm like, man, that's so cool, right? Like somebody would see that and help out. My mom knew that eventually she had to get us out of Macon. So we ended up moving to a place called Concepts 21. Now, in my eyes, this was like a high-end hood, if there's such a thing. And this was probably my first experience of dealing with a lot of pain, both physically and emotionally, I think. And I'm pretty young at this point. If I'm not mistaken, I'm probably like 4. I remember, I just remember getting my butt kicked a few times there, getting jumped by some older boys. I remember riding my bike, crashing it. I remember burning my hand on the grill real bad there. Like, I don't know what it was about that place, but like when I think about Concepts 21, I just think about all the pain that I felt. And so my mom got to a point where she was able to level us up again. And we moved to Norcross, which is just north of Atlanta. It's like second real city, or the first city right outside the perimeter on the north side. And man, I just remember when we pulled in this place, it was like, holy cow, this is amazing. And I felt like if you've ever come up like a level, you're like, man, we've made it. And this is like the most middle class neighborhood ever back then. 3-bedroom, probably a little over 2,000 square feet. And the neighborhood was huge. I mean, hundreds of houses, absolutely massive, but tons of kids. I mean, just absolutely tons of kids. One of the greatest neighborhoods you could ever want to grow up in. It was fantastic. Lots of athletes in there. Jesse Tuggle, if you guys remember him for the Falcons, he used to live in there. And yes, he lived well below his means, by the way. So if you're like, oh, you lived in a Falcons neighborhood, first of all, his house was much nicer than mine. And he lived well below his means. So take that for what it's worth. In elementary school, I was hyper, couldn't sit still, couldn't focus. Everyone looked at me like something was wrong with me. I even felt sometimes like something was wrong with me. I genuinely got to a point where the disappointment from the teachers, hearing all the conversations about what to do with me, like something was broken, going to the counselor, being put on Ritalin, which absolutely almost killed me. I remember Ritalin stole my personality. I went into like a really deep depression. And as a young kid in elementary school, started cutting myself, which was strange. But for whatever reason, I learned early that I wasn't able to vocalize my frustration a lot. I struggled. So the best way for me to release the anger and the frustration was to cut. So I started cutting a lot when I was in elementary school, and I would cut in areas where people wouldn't see. During the wintertime, I would do it a lot on my arms, but it was mostly my chest. My chest and my stomach is what I would cut the most. But I think it's weird because a lot of kids deal with that. A lot of kids do it still this day, which I think is crazy. That like we resort to that. Like I don't know. Like, how do we come up with that idea that like I'm just going to cut myself and everything's going to be okay? I have no clue how we get there, but elementary was rough. They held me back. I think it was kindergarten. There was like a grade in between they called readiness. And then I remember in third grade, they included me in this program where I had a mentor that came from the high school. And we would go out on the playground, like they would check me out of class and we would throw the ball. I'd like bring my baseball glove, we'd throw the baseball. He'd bring a football, we'd throw a football. It was just it was actually pretty cool. Like at first, I thought it was stupid just because it was different, right? Like here I am struggling and more people are having to be inconvenienced by me. And so I still remember like Miss Cowan, I think she was my third grade teacher, probably gave me the most hope. Like the fact that I still remember her name, and I don't really remember any of my other, even through high school, maybe like a couple. Like coaches, I remember them, but like teachers, I don't remember the names. But I remember my third grade teacher. She was unbelievably awesome. Just tried really hard to help me. And I remember we had like multiple choice and the whole class would have like 4 options and she would give me 2, which actually worked. Funny enough. I was still getting them right or wrong, but I just had less options, which I felt at the time was helpful because I felt overwhelmed and I overthought the 4 answers to the question. And then I would a lot of times run out of time and not finish. So otherwise, basically, you would classify me in elementary school as ADD or ADHD, learning disability, slow to no reader, like really struggled reading. I remember being in class and like the teacher talking and I just couldn't keep up. Like I couldn't process fast enough. So, I mean, I was an athlete and I was good at that. But when it came to school, I wasn't very good. So my mom ended up marrying this guy in between the divorce of my father and the remarrying. And this dude was a total, I don't know, we'll call him a douchebag. Probably not nice, but the key to this story was he had a son who had some, I think he was schizophrenic. It made the house and living there very stressful. One of the very first times that I had hung out with him, we were told to go out and rake the yard. And we were raking the yard and like we got into an argument. I remember somebody coming and dropping off a skateboard And then it was something, they were like, hey, come play. And we were like, we can't. And then I think he was going to run off and leave me with the work. So I said something, and then he ended up he had a metal rake, and he ended up hitting me in the face with it. I just remember being all scratched up, and then we kind of like fought and wrestled on the ground. He's a couple years older than me and a little bit bigger. But I just remember thinking, man, like, I felt like I'm back at Concepts 21 a little bit, but I really enjoyed getting hit, which was weird. It was kind of like the cut. So when I got hit in the face and cut and then punched, I realized that I enjoyed it. So we would be on the bus coming home from school, and I would ask my friends in the neighborhood if they would fight me. And we'd all go home and change clothes and all meet on the side of my house because my mom would be at work. And probably be like 6 or 7 kids. And be like one-on-one. You know, we kind of had rules like, you know, don't kick each other in the balls. But you can punch and kick. You can hit in the head. But like, it goes until you quit. No matter what. And I really liked that. Like, it almost felt healthy for me because that was an outlet where, number one, I felt like I was pretty good at it. But number two, like, here I am, elementary kid, figuring out how to let out other than cutting. So for me at the point, it was a good thing for me. And I went to Duluth, which was a different school zone, and I had to make a lot of new friends. And there was a couple other people that I knew, but not a lot. So I was kind of like a new kid at the school, and here I am, somewhat awkward. 6th grade, middle school. And I'll never forget, my mom convinced me that everyone goes to middle school, they dress nice. And I don't know if this was like, you know, my mom had money maybe for the first time, and she felt really good about maybe buying me some nice clothes. I'm not sure. But she convinced me that people dress nice. And at the time, like, you know, I kind of probably dressed like a little thug, sagging pants and whatever, going into 6th grade. I just remember, like, none of my shoes were nice, and I wore sweatpants and t-shirts and shorts, like basketball shorts and stuff like that all the time. Starter jacket in the winter. Y'all remember that? For those of you guys old enough. Stuff like that. So anyway, long story short, I went to school with church clothes on because that's what she told me worked. And I just remember everybody being like, why are you so dressed up? Blah, blah, blah. And like, it was everybody. I felt like, so I was so embarrassed. I went to the bathroom and I was just sitting in the stall like, what am I going to do? So I went to the doctor or the little nurse's office and faked sick, went home, told my mom I'm not wearing any of those clothes, and started wearing like sweatpants and t-shirt every day. So failed experiment on my mom's part, unfortunately.
Hey guys, I found something that changed my business and I want to share it with you. We've created packages that have included some of the best products in our industry to offer our service customers. The heart of that package is Stealth Hardware Kit. Stealth Hardware is the quietest hinges on the market. I challenge you to buy at least one of these, test it for yourself. Put it on your truck and design a quiet performance package for your customers willing to pay for a better, smoother running door. Buy your Stealth hardware kit at Service Spring, do a search for Quiet Hinge, and then buy that. You can buy a double or single door, 7 or 8 foot tall, and promise you, it'll change your service forever.
Somer USA and Somer Group want to thank you for an incredible year and the trust you put in them and their products. As you know, Somer places high value on relationships, education, customer service, innovation, and professionalism. And they are grateful to you for your part in the fostering and dissemination of these values. If there is any way Somer can support you in your journey, whether through their products, the values they hold to, or the knowledge Somer has gained through interaction with door dealers across the world, please reach out to the team at your convenience. They are here to serve you. Again, thank you from the entire Somer team. Check them out at somerusa.com. Tell them Ryan sent you.
And sometime in middle school, I can't remember when, it might have been 8th grade. I was a pretty good athlete. I played AAU basketball. I played one season of football, which I wasn't great at the time. I was athletic, not great coaching, wasn't really given much of a chance. And I just remember how awkward it was the first time I put pads on. But baseball was my jam. Like, that's what I really felt good about. It's what I love to do. And I played a lot of like street basketball, but I quit sports in middle school. I quit baseball. I quit football. I believe I quit basketball. I may have stayed with basketball. I'm not sure. But this is when things really started going downhill. Around 12 years old, I get introduced to drugs in the neighborhood and other things. And so I started experimenting around 12 years old. And I just remember thinking, like, my mom always scared me to death about, like, if you do drugs, you're going to die. But I would go to this area where we had a bike trail. And it was a really cool area. Like, I wish my kids had something like this. But we would all hang out at the bike trail, and the older kids would smoke weed, and then the next day I'd see them like at the bus stop. And I'd be like, they're not dead. And they look like they're having a blast. So I kind of felt lied to. And when you're in the state of mind that I was in, it's kind of like, man, I'm not happy. And I'm cutting and fighting. No one understands me. And so that's how I got to, I think, an experimental phase, right? So I was in 9th grade at Duluth, still not doing well, but like at this point, like I think 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th was like, I was all into girls. Everything I did, just unhealthy level, unhealthy level. And then I would just do anything to get girls' attention. I'd come home, talk on the phone from the time I got home to the time I went to bed. Sometimes, like, it was crazy. So lots of fighting started happening. We had a lot of like racial stuff going on at Duluth at this time. And I was friends with, awkwardly enough, like all the cliques. I was friends with most of the athletes. There were a couple bullies and pricks that I recall. I was friends with the black group. I was friends with the Hispanic group. I was friends with like the goth group. I think the only people that I wasn't friends with was the people in ROTC. I joined ROTC because I got talked into it, I think, by my dad. And I just thought it was a joke the whole time. So I may have failed ROTC. I'm pretty sure I was told I was the first person to fail ROTC. But I just thought it was laughable when like this senior who was like a leader was yelling at us all like we were in boot camp. And yes, I mean, he was built and like a machine. I'm sure he probably made a great soldier, but realistically, that wasn't the life I was going for. I'm actually the first male to not go into the military, but I don't think I was cut out for it at the time. It probably would have done me really well. Who knows? So anyway, this fight breaks out in the foyer, like the courtyard. And it was interesting because I had like, it was between the blacks and Hispanics, I believe. And what was interesting is I was like, I was definitely not going to fight because I had a lot of friends on both sides. And I just remember like people from both sides came and handed me some of their belongings, which was totally awkward because I'm like holding belongings from people from both sides, like, you know, jewelry, watches, wallets, whatever. But over that week, like a teacher, I think, got hit. A police officer got hit in the fight. Cops were called. Turned into be like, I don't know, 30 to 50 people. Like an all-out brawl broke out. And I think it was reported like 30-something kids were arrested from that fight. And I was just hanging out with people who probably weren't positively impacting me at the time. And I will mention that like my mom started taking me to church in Alpharetta when I was like 10, 12 years old. I think that was about the age. And I got to meet this family. And I'm not going to say like I truly believed in God at the time because I probably didn't. Let me take that back. I probably did believe there was a God. I just didn't think he liked me. Right? I felt like I probably had a poor me attitude because of a lot of the stuff that I had been through. So I kind of didn't put a lot of weight into that. Matter of fact, like I remember around that 12, 13 year range, I would be at church and I would sneak out and I would, this is horrible, but I would roll weed in Bible paper and smoke a joint in the parking lot while church was going on. And that should tell you about my relationship with God at the time. My mom started seeing like all this stuff and got a little worried. So she started putting things in play for us to move to a little town called Flowery Branch, which was about 30 minutes north of where we were at. And I had never been to Flowery Branch, like ever. I'd never heard of it. The furthest north I went was Buford, and Flowery Branch was like a little bit north of there. And I very rarely, if ever, went to Buford. So there really wasn't a reason to go to Buford back then for us, which is where I live now, actually. But I just didn't get out much. I mean, other than traveling for sports and stuff, that was the only time we ever really went to other towns. And I think my mom had this mentality, like, if she gets me around all these, like, maybe not so bad influences, that I'll change and things will get better for me. And I still remember almost like it was yesterday. It was my first week of school, and I'm in the gym, PE, shooting basketball, and this girl walks up, and she's like, "Hey, you're new," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm new," and she said, "I'm Amanda." I was like, "Hey, Amanda," and she kind of seemed like she had this chip on her shoulder for some reason. I couldn't figure out why. So anyway, I would shoot and she would rebound it and just like throw the ball away from me. And I was like, "What are you doing, Amanda?" And she's like, "I don't know. Go get the ball." And just kind of like had this really awkward personality. And I thought she was trying to have fun with me. But then after she did it like 3 or 4 times, I called her the B word, right? I mean, use your imagination. You can figure it out. And come to find out, like, that she flipped out. Like, apparently that was the trigger. And she was dating some guy named Josh who had dropped out of high school and apparently was a drug dealer. And I came to school the next day and everybody's hitting me up. "Man, Ryan, Josh wants to fight you. Josh wants to fight you. He wants to meet you after school." And I'm just like, what is happening right now? So I didn't know Josh. I didn't know Amanda. First week of school. And I have weight training last period with Coach Lucas, which Coach Lucas, let's just say Coach Lucas didn't really like me either. I had a mouth on me. He was kind of a big guy. We'd be doing bench press and he'd just come over and slap your chest. And so I'd pop off on it because I thought that was stupid. But he came up to me when I was working out and he was like, "Hey, I heard you're going to fight after school." And I'm like, "Coach, man, I didn't do anything. Like, I'm just going because I feel like I got to stand up for myself and, make sure people know that I'm not going to just bow down." And he was like, "Well, you missed yesterday's workout." I think I skipped it. I don't remember what happened, but I had missed the day before. So he said, "You got to do uppers and lowers." And then he said, "I'm going to be with you." So he worked me out so hard, upper and lower body. And I was walking out and he says, "Ryan," and I turn around and he goes, "You got enough strength to fight?" I was like, "It's not about that." I said, "I've got enough strength to fight." And what I meant by that was I didn't care how tired I was. Like, back then, I was the fighter who could not throw a punch and take 30 massive licks and would not go down. It's just who I was. Like, I enjoyed it. It was fun for me. Like, me getting hit made me smile and it freaked people out. So for that moment in time, I hadn't been in a fight probably in a little while. And so I was kind of excited about it, but I was also completely wore out. My legs were shaking and I had to go to this place where I didn't even know that it was Old Federal Park. I didn't even know where that was at. So I had to follow someone there. I get out of my car and Sabrina, which was my buddy's girlfriend, she jumps out the passenger seat of his car, or they were standing over by his car, I can't remember, runs up and gives me a hug. And she's like, "Hey," she's whispering in my ear. She's like, "Hey, Josh can fight. Please be careful." And as she's saying that, I see somebody coming out of the corner of my eye and he nails me from the back of the head. And I had pushed her away. So he sucker punched me and then proceeded to just keep hitting me on the back of the head. And I was definitely caught off guard, stumbling a little bit. And then as soon as I got my feet under me, I just like came up and punched him one time and the fight was over. And so he called me that night. But before that, I got home and my mom saw the fingerprint or the knuckle prints in the back of my head. And she said, because I'm bald now, but I was pretty bald then too. Or I did like a buzz cut. And she freaked out about me fighting again. So anyway, long story short, he called me that night. He got my phone number from somebody and called me and was like, hey, you want to hang out? So I ended up going to hang out with those guys. I ended up fighting another one of that group. He was stealing something off my plate and I smacked him. In the lunchroom, his feelings got hurt. So he ended up having a bunch of people lock me in the locker room. And he wasn't really much of a fighter. I think he was pushed into it by his buddies who were probably too scared at the time to fight. That was a 30-second deal. That wasn't even really a fight. So that didn't last long. And he's a cool dude, like friends with him now, but not really friends with him, but we're connected on Facebook and he's a good dude. But I think my mom realized that, yeah, I had some negative influences, but I think the trouble followed me. And what was really cool about when I moved to West Hall was, I tried out for the football team. Well, actually, I didn't try out for the football team. The first week of school, they were already in shoulder pads and helmet. And my dad and I went and talked to the coach and they let me on the team. And then I don't know, I was probably only there for 2 weeks. This is my sophomore year, West Hall High School in Flowery Branch. And I called to the principal's office and the principal is just cool as can be. And he's like, hey, Ryan, how's it going? Are you settling in? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I really want you to feel comfortable here. I was like, Coach, I feel great. And he said, look, I know this is probably not ideal. He's like, but you're new, so it's probably gonna be less of an adjustment for you than anyone else. We've got some overflow in some classes, more kids than we originally thought. So we've got to move you around. And he gives me my new schedule. And I was like, yeah, no problem. I don't care. Makes no difference to me. I probably wasn't planning on showing up all of them anyway. And I start walking out, right? And I'm looking at this piece of paper and all these names say coach in front of it, except for the last one. It was maybe not the last one. I don't remember which one it was, but one of them did not say coach. And then I recognized that all of them were football coaches. And I'm sitting here like, man, I'm going to be able to coast here. Like the pressure for the academics just lifted. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but mentally I felt better about things because, the schoolwork was stressing me out really bad. So knowing that I had mostly coaches and I only needed to pass those classes, I really just tried to focus on those as much as I could. The problem was my sophomore year, I was getting into drinking really bad. And I would drink before school and pass out in first period, which was one of those was Coach Jenkins. And that didn't go very well, but he covered up for me a little bit, helped me out because he would wake me up. And then after class, he'd make me stay and talk to me about drinking. And he could obviously smell it. And he said, look, the kids around you can smell it. He's like, you got to figure something out. He's like, because I got to turn you in if you don't, because he didn't want to get in trouble, obviously. So here I am, a complete mess, right? I'm partying. Weekends, I'm breaking into cars, just doing stupid stuff, going to parties, making bad decisions. And I remember between my sophomore and junior year. Now, keep in mind, I was scrawny. Like I was not a big kid. Growing up, I was like a rail. Just skin and bones. I was feisty, but I was skin and bones. I wasn't very strong. I was just skinny. And so my freshman year, I was about 5'10", 150 pounds. which was the biggest I had ever been, obviously. But between my sophomore and junior year, I grew to 6'1", 205 pounds. And I was in the gym a lot. So I was working out and I was getting big. I literally felt invincible. So you take someone who's not afraid to fight, doesn't mind getting hit, and then you give them some muscle and testosterone's just going crazy. The fighting and everything just kind of picked up. My drinking was getting out of hand. And I remember being in one of the classes and they came over the intercom and they said that we're going to start prepping for SAT. And that we were going to take this exam to like see where we were at, I think. I don't remember the details of this. I just remember thinking, I'm not going to fail another test. I'm not. Like, I'm not going to college. I'm not a good high school student. I'm not going to be a good college student. And I wanted out. So I stood up and I put my stuff in my bag. I zipped it up. I walked out of class and I quit. I dropped out of high school my junior year. And I never went back. My parents tried to put me in homeschool, but the problem with that was no one could be at home to teach me, and all I wanted to do was smoke weed on the back porch all day. So nothing was really getting done. And I just started partying. Like, now it wasn't just the weekends, it was like every night. So I feel like this is a good stopping point. We're like 40 minutes in. I don't know if this is, I think it's going to go down a good path. This is a foundational. I think you had to know some of these things about me in order for you to understand like the rest of this. Maybe I wasted too much time on this one. I'll try to be tight on the next one, but I don't know. Maybe it's enough. Maybe it's perfect. You can always listen to it at 1.2 or 1.5 if you need to. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this first of a 3 or 4 part series about my life and the background and how I came up and how I got started. I've got some exciting stuff coming up on the next few episodes of this. I got it planned out for the most part, and I think you'll enjoy it. So anyway, thank you for following along. If this was good, maybe we wait till the next one, because you guys probably are going to think this sucks. So let's wait till the next one and then hit me up and tell me if you like it or not. Today was more of a foundational thing. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Hope my sponsors don't drop me. You guys take care.